Future Redeemed has come and gone, its story now told, but with the confirmation of more Xenoblade coming, the question remains, just where do we go from here? Well, let's sit back, kick our feet up, and have a nice comfy little chat about the direction this beloved series of ours may take in the coming years. As the future awaits, let's take one step after the other. So we essentially have two post-credit scenes to analyze that are going to get an idea about where they want to take this franchise. We have the ending of the base game, where Noah hears the off-scene tune and walks off into the crowd before he just straight up instant transmissions out of there. That's going to be our character-driven ending. We also have the ending brought with Future Redeemed, where we see the world separating again, before emitting a bright light. Different colors though. And after the light swallows them up, we are left with but one world placed square in the center of the screen, with some blue light hurtling closer and closer towards the planet. This will be our world-driven ending. I'm a firm believer that both of these endings are hinting towards where the future of the story is going to go, and that these two scenes specifically clue us into a lot of the future direction of the series. I thought Future Redeemed would show us the Mio perspective to the Noah scene we saw at the end of the base game, but instead they just showed us the worlds themselves, so we now essentially have two core pillars of what makes up a story: the world itself and the characters. Hence the character-driven ending and the world-driven ending. Now, what's the mystery tying it all together? Well, it's very simple. What happened to the world? The goal of Origin was to activate, so that when the worlds merged and destroyed each other, Origin would be able to recreate both worlds and send them on their respective ways, separated once again. And that is what we assumed happened in the base game, and what we assume we see for most of the Future Redeemed ending. But we agreed with two curveballs: Noah disappearing in the character-driven ending, and the world seemingly re-merging together as one in the world-based ending. Both events come out of left field and are treated rather briskly. They aren't really dwelled on, they just happen within the span of a couple of seconds, and then that's that. Fade to black. See you in the next game. The mystery is almost certainly the point, and I don't think for a second that the story is completely over. Heck, I've talked for months at this point about the interview Ask the Developer Volume 6 that Takahashi did, as well as the email he sent out to Japanese players, links in the description down below, where he essentially just flat out said, Xenoblade is continuing, and you can use the information from Xenoblade 3 and the DLCs to figure out what's gonna happen next. This feels like the textbook definition of setup to me, where they give us a sense of finality to the story in both games before these moments, and now give us a thread to paw at until the next game. This thread being, what happened to the worlds of the Bionis and Allrest? Did they actually merge, or did something else happen? Well, I mentioned previously that there were a few possibilities of what the ending of Future Redeemed was supposed to show. Heck, I even kind of succumbed to the idea that it's supposed to be only one specific ending when I first played Future Redeemed. There's many different ways that ending could be interpreted. Either the worlds properly coming together somehow due to something that we did in Ionios, whether it's in Future Redeemed or in the base game, such as replacing Alpha with Rex, Shulk, and A, or stopping the Agni-Kavesi War, or the people themselves yearning for unification. Perhaps it's something as simple as there's a glitch in Origin software. Not exactly like they could beta test this thing. The worlds could have interlinked instead. We know multiple people can form a single interlink because of Future Redeemed. That was the entire point of how we beat Alpha. Convenient information to reveal to us right before the post-credits scene, huh? And we see them taking the form of these little balls of light. Again, interesting considering how the post-credits scene has a similar visual. The worlds could have just straight up not merged, and all the ending is showing is one of the worlds after it fully separated from the other. I think this one can't be discounted, but I think it's easily the least likely. The framing of Future Redeemed really makes you feel like the worlds re-emerged somehow, and I think that's going to be the story in the future. But why this ending? I held and still hold that the story of bringing the worlds together is prime real estate for a fully fleshed out Xenoblade game. So why do it so quickly, right now? Well, there's a few possibilities. A story of unifying the worlds would almost certainly deal with either a dual world perspective or another middleman world like Ionios, or just hyper-focusing on only one world, and they just may not want to design a game in that style. Bringing the worlds together creates a sense of mystery to bring people into the next game, while giving them a chance at creating or using a new world with new aesthetics, or just being able to naturally pair characters and aesthetics from Biotis and Allrest together, without having to make a lore excuse for every single interaction. If you shift the story, or at least the storytelling imperative, to keeping the worlds merged or finding common ground once again between these two worlds, now thrust together again, well, it gives you your theme to expand on and flesh out throughout the game, while keeping a similar theme to what you get with a story about bringing the worlds together. I still think unity will probably end up being the theme of the next game, just instead of coming together, it will be about sticking together. Whereas 3 was about us being willing to forego our present contentment to walk into an uncertain future, imagine 4 will be about us needing to walk into that uncertain future hand in hand together. A mystery will almost certainly be what caused the worlds to merge, and why the Cosmos reference in the ending as well, because yeah, it's Cosmos, right? Like, sure, it's not technically confirmed. At the same time though, like, that's just Cosmos. If you don't believe me, watch the ending, the post-credit scene specifically of Xenosaga 3. I haven't even played Xenosaga, but yeah, it's kind of identical. And with all the other Saga references, come on, it just is. Like, we could be pedantic or just admit what they're really clearly trying to tell us. But here's the thing, and whether or not you like it, there will be one other major question permeating Xenoblade 4 before its release, or at least before its first trailer and announcement, and possibly even throughout the game. And that is the canonicity of Xenoblade Chronicles X. Hold on, yeah. The lore of X doesn't match up with established Saga and Blade lore. Yeah, I've seen the videos. There are a couple things to bear in mind. One, if they want it to be canon, they can just make it canon. Like, they can retcon whatever they want to make it canon. It's not like they're afraid of retconning things. They retconned Alphys' necklace to be the Onto's core crystal in the definitive edition compared to the base game. Sure, it's not going to be to the scale of the retcons that would be needed for X, but it still at least shows a willingness to retcon, if needed, to tell a better story. And also, number 2, and this one's the big one, they have an ironclad, irrefutable out, that no matter what theory or prediction or detail you notice or come up with, or theorize or predict, this out always lies in waiting that can be utilized to bring X into the canon without any disruption or retcon into the lore. It can happen at any moment, at any time, without harming a single piece of lore anywhere in the game, or the series. And that out comes from Xenoblade Chronicles 2. So yeah, Klaus kind of confirmed the multiverse, which, it can be viewed as a cheap out, like, I get it, but again, it is right there if they want to use it. So the only reason they wouldn't bring X into the canon is not because they wouldn't fit, they can make it fit. They have ways to go about this, whether or not they want to lean into retcons and make it happen in the same world, quote unquote, have a few massive reveals, or just say, yeah, you know one of those other worlds that had portals open to them back in Klaus's day when he activated the conduit? Yeah, one of those led to X. That's all they need to do. Heck, if they want, they could slightly retcon X's beginning and make it be that the white whale departed from an alternate universe's Earth, suddenly, and without the knowledge of anyone else, somehow it went through one of those portals, looked back, saw Klaus's experiment manifest, split the world in twain, think they were seeing their Earth be destroyed instead, and then have something happen that causes them to get the mirror. Whether that be another portal, or a result of Klaus's experiment, or whatever. They have ways around this. They have ways of bringing X into the canon, even if it means leaving every X reference that was in the radio scene as just a reference. Will they go this route? I'm not sold on it personally. Again, I don't think this is likely, but it is possible. I think the only person they could potentially want from X really is Elma, just to bridge all the games together. I haven't finished X yet, so I'm not going to theorize too much on it, though I do know some things about the ending. But like I said before, they always have that out, because of the many world aspect 2 brought to the table. I think the safe play, though, is to work under the assumption that Saga is canonized into Blade, and keep Gears and X as a question mark, because Gears is tied up with Square Enix right now. Sure, Saga's tied up with Bandai Namco, but we're starting to see some things come together there, and they were very upfront and direct with the Saga references. And X, let's be honest, I'm an X fan, but it wasn't that popular. Wii U. Well, also, the game just doesn't focus on its narrative all that much. It's mainly there to showcase its gameplay in the open world. Its story largely takes a backseat to that concept, and that's just not the case for the other Xenoblade games. and I assume Xenosaga. They've clearly garnered inspiration gameplay-wise from X, with 3 and the ending theme for Future Redeemed had the vocalist from Gears, if I recall correctly, while 3 itself acted as a Gears retelling for what I'm told from the 7 people that played Xenogears. So either they referenced the Xeno game story-wise, or gameplay-wise, or they brought it into the canon straight up. All the Xeno titles were represented in 3 in some capacity. X with its gameplay influences, Gears with the formula of 3's story, Saga with being brought into the canon, and Blade because, duh, it's Xenoblade 3. Now, with that information, where's the story likely to go from here? Like I said before, it's probably going to end up dealing with this remerged world and what happened to it. Why did it remerge? Or unify back together as one? What's going to happen to the people now? How did it re-emerge? What are the consequences of that? These are questions that will probably get answers at some point. And personally, I think the safest bet for where the story goes from here is the idea that the worlds themselves interlinked. And that the play for Xenoblade 4 will be for us to do essentially the opposite of Xenoblade 3. And try and keep them together instead of tearing it all apart. Rebuild the world and keep it whole instead of tearing it all down. Thematically, it works going off of 3's theme. 3 identified the fact that the world itself was corrupted and the systems in place that became normalized in society were too irrevocably corrupted, they had to be excised from society. The world itself had to be torn down, with all the disruption in people's lives that would bring, because that was for the greater good. In Xenoblade 4, we essentially have a fresh start, with these 2 worlds no longer bound by the chains of Mobius or Ionios, now re-emerged or remerged into this new unified world, possibly because of the result of an interlink. But this is probably not going to be a world that we want to tear it down again. We need to build this new world up. This essentially new Elysium, where we're going to have to put the effort in and day out to prove that we can live together and walk hand in hand towards a brighter future tomorrow, or brighter tomorrow together. That sounds like a theme Xenoblade would cover, right? Make it so that the party can consist of characters or races from either 1 or 2, gives you a chance of making a new world with new threats and new aesthetics. Seems like a safe bet for me gameplay-wise. Or at least, if I'm constructing a game, that's the one to go with, because it gives you the most creative flexibility when it comes to designing the game, but also the story, while feeling consistent with what came before. Like, you could just do that they merged perfectly because interlinks are magic, and just do a giant time skip, but I think that would be honestly rather dismissive of 3's ending, which they aren't prone to do. Having the world interlink but the threat of a permanent separation maintains the emotional gravitas of 3's ending that we're constantly trying to work against. Because remember, in 3, sure, interlinks brought people together, but they also timed out eventually and forced people to separate, or they self-destructed. You can have that be essentially the sword of Damocles hanging over the entire story of Xenoblade 4. Where yeah, the worlds emerged for now, but they're gonna separate. And the goal is, instead of trying to get the worlds to separate, we have to get the worlds to unify and stay that way. Going with that theme keeps the weight of 3's ending mostly intact, in my opinion. Tact. Also, as a brief aside, I think they stick with the name Xenoblade. Look, I think the next game is fair game to be considered Xenosaga 4 or Xenoblade 4, depending on your perspective, but I think it will be called Blade 4 for the simple reason that Xenoblade is more recognizable as a brand now. Release ports or a remake of Saga, you can call it like, I don't know, Xenosaga, a Xenoblade Chronicles, or a Xenoblade Chronicle, or some stuff like that. Or just stick with the name Xenosaga. But Blade is the name that is known nowadays. Though either way, I could 100% see Cosmos returning as a character in Xenoblade 4. To be fair, they've gotten Cosmos before with 2, so it can happen. So yeah, that's where I think the story is going from here. I think the ending of Future Redeemed showed us the 2 worlds interlinking because they've now established that multiple souls are able to interlink into one entity at this point now. So you have all the souls of both worlds, Kevers and Agnes, interlinked together to form a new world, and the idea for Xenoblade 4 will be for us to prevent the cooldown from essentially going, so that we can keep the worlds unified and to save the world. That makes sense to me, because for the longest time, I've thought, ever since Xenoblade 3 finished, or at least when I beat Xenoblade 3 for the first time, one of my first theories that I ever thought of was that, oh yeah, Xenoblade 4 is going to be about bringing the worlds back together. That or the DLC is going to cover it. I eventually moved to thinking that Xenoblade 4 would cover that because I thought, you know what, a story about bringing the world together seems like something they would want to cover in a 100-hour RPG, not just a 20-hour DLC, but hey, turns out they want to do in like a 15-second post-credit scene. And if that's the case, where do you go from there? Well, keep the similar theme, bring the worlds together just now, instead of bringing them together actively, you keep them together. That's the theory that makes the most sense to me. Maybe we get a couple new protagonists, and the rest of the party could be composed of characters like Cosmos, or Noah and Mio. Or you can have those other older characters from the previous games serve as like the supplementary characters surrounding the main party, like Nia and Melia did in 3. There's ways to go about this, but I still think the story of the unification of the worlds is going to be the game for Xenoblade 4. That's the one that makes the most narrative sense to me. The most thematic sense to me. Just instead of bringing the worlds together, we now have to keep them together. So yeah, that's where I think the story is going from here. I think it'll be called Xenoblade Chronicles 4. They could just drop the Chronicles if they want, and it's called Xenoblade 4. I could see that happening, because Xenoblade's the real part of the name that everybody knows. The Chronicles is just whatever. But people know Xenoblade. So I think the next game is Xenoblade 4, deals with keeping the worlds merged together. I think Cosmos will probably end up making an appearance. And I think before we get Xenoblade 4, I think we get the Xenosaga ports. Either ports or just a fully fleshed out remake. I think that's the play to go with as to what to expect in the future. Because after having played Xenoblade 3 and the DLCs, I'm following Takahashi's advice and taking the information we have at our disposal right now to try and imagine where the series will go from here, and that's where I imagine it goes. So I'm going to call the video there for the day. Thank you all for tuning in. My pleasure making the video. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like and subscribe. It really helps the channel out and helps support future content, and I greatly appreciate it. Stay safe, everybody. Have a great day. Hit the bell icon to be notified when I upload in the future. Have a great day. We got Tears of the Kingdom coming out very, very soon, and don't worry, I'll be covering it on this channel. Have a great day. Go play some video games if you can. As always, I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye, everybody.